everybody? I'm Mango Thunderslice, and I guess we're still talking about this because it's still happening, and it doesn't seem to be letting up. The rioting and the looting seems to have tempered a little bit, but there's still, the virtue signaling is nowhere near stopping, and, I don't expect it to stop anymore. And of course, the windows are still boarded up on all the businesses, not just in Sacramento, but up where we live, right? This is not just in the big cities anymore. This is really a coordinated attack on all sorts of different jurisdictions across the country. And it's just, it further illustrates the absurdity of it all, because not everywhere in the country is just, has a police officer at a police department that's just wantonly killing people, of color or otherwise. It's not happening, right? We have already lost more lives during these riots and protests than unarmed people were killed by police in the United States in the whole of 2019. It is not an epidemic. It's not even rising to the level of a problem. Again, yes, do those lives matter? Yes, but 9 out of the 10 were black, but at the same time, black, individuals are responsible for 90% of the interracial violence. It's basically the black on white crime is insanely higher than the white on black crime. Police are not police, right? And so you've got to take the whole picture into consideration when you understand that, when they were talking about defunding the police already don't patrol a lot of these neighborhoods as much because they basically get attacked when they're there. They don't have the support of the people. And it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario, I will admit. There's a history of trouble, and so they have that memory, and so it just keeps egging on and on and on. And this is why I've talked about why we need to create energetic, fields in our living spaces, in our cities and living, regions that are conducive to positive human relations. That comes down to the design and planning of communities. It also comes down to things like Organite and making organic avenues, right? To things that lift the human soul, things that don't just degrade us all in this electromagnetic soup and, just having liquor stores and mini marts with all artificial toxic food, substitutes really, because it's not even food, right? Can you tell me really that Gatorade is a food? I don't think so, but where does it all go? At some point, it's the saddest part about this, as, we all recognize at this point, is that we really had an opportunity in a very real human sense to stand together on this and condemn police brutality, because even if it's only 10 deaths in a year, again, if police were properly trained, then those people shouldn't have died, right? That we can still address the problem even if it's very small and, totally negligible in a statistical sense. But, it exists. And these officers do exist, these problem officers. Derek Chauvin, I guess, was one of them. He had like 35 complaints against him. He was in like the top 10% in the precinct of, basically negative reviewed, complained against officers. And so what is it that makes it hard to fire a person who is that bad at their job, who has so many people complaining about their misconduct and, basically just failure to effectively represent the force and conduct, their job in an ethical and compliant manner, right? It's the union, right? It's the same thing for teachers and all the other unions. Shitty people can't get fired when they're part of a union, right? So again, this is the chicken and egg is very much a Democrat city paradigm, because you have all these corrupt structures within the political economy that are all self-reinforcing. You have the corrupt mayor, you have the corrupt city council, you have the corrupt police force, even the fire department are setting fires at a certain point, right? You've got all these pension funds and everything. Everyone's sucking off the big state teat and, basically just retiring with huge pension packages, and it's all basically corrupt and incestuous on so many different levels. And by all means, I have more gripes against the state than even Black Lives Matter does at a certain point, and I can actually enumerate them and coherently argue my points, unlike Black Lives Matter, which is basically a terrorist organization, the same as Antifa. I won't hear any of the bullshit about how it's just an advocacy organization to tell people that Black Lives Matter. I don't believe it. Until I see some actual humility and humble acknowledgement of all the problems and all the causes of black lives being ended unjustly, then I don't consider this to be a good faith discussion. I consider it to be a child wailing at the sky because they didn't get what they want given to them. Not something that they've earned, not something that they want to have an opportunity to pursue, but they want things given to them, like a screaming child. And I don't negotiate with terrorists. Not even close, right? Until we acknowledge the 5,000, black lives that are ended by other black lives on the streets of American cities every single year, I'm not going to talk about the 9 in 2019. It's completely ridiculous discussion to only discuss the police killings, which are infinitesimally small in a country of over 300 million people. And not discuss the gang wars on our streets, not discuss the interracial crime that is black on white, not discuss the rampant criminality of blacks in America. I mean, again, we don't have to get into phrenology, where they measure the skulls and try and, predict human behavior. We don't have to go down that. We can just look at the statistics and see that our civilization is crumbling, and it's very much along these fault lines, which are racial and cultural. And as one of our good subscribers pointed out in a comment on the last video, racism in a very practical way was almost eliminated from this country. It was basically eradicated. And that was, I feel like, the years that I grew up, I didn't feel like I perceived any racism, but I mean, what do I know? I'm just whitey, right? But the media basically inflamed this. Again, it's part of social Marxism and just creating these social dividing lines, identitarian dividing lines that can never be resolved. The only thing that they offer to resolve it is communism, is basically restitution payments and just giving free money to the children who are screaming and wailing that they want their free stuff. And it's just, there might even be a legitimate conversation to be had about reparations if they could conduct it in a sane and calm manner. But the idea of capitulating to the violent rioting mob and a bunch of basically, white commies that are completely mentally flaccid supporting them because they have nothing better to do with their time and no real conception of ethics or morality, well, then, it's a problem. It's a big problem, and it's not going anywhere. And, again, it's not, I'm not saying that segregation was better than how it is now, but it is true that blacks, had similar rates of marriage and two-parent households and, religion instruction in the family. And, there's such a dividing line between, I feel like, the old school black Americans and basically those who have been raised in broken households since the 70s, right? And they pretend at a certain point that, we just, we need more abortions to make up for it, and more free money payments, more reparations, and that's going to fix the problem. I'm sorry, but that is an absolutely fallacious point of view. You don't give people money and then they become ethical and moral, right? People become ethical and moral and then they start to build real wealth because they're actually in control of their energy field, and they stop leaking it and just spreading it and, just pissing it all over everything. Like an emotional child, right? Because that's what it is about. I don't even have to bring this down to, one race versus another. It's basically weak people and strong people. And, at a certain point, whether it's ingrained in our DNA or it's culturally learned, at a certain point, there's different strength to different nationalities, right? As another commenter pointed out in response to a point in the last video about, why there's not many Asian Americans getting killed by police. And he's pointed out quite obviously, it's that Asians think more about what they do beforehand. They're more introverted. They don't go and drop their problems on other people. They're, very kind of compact in a sense with their emotions and very in control of their emotional outbursts. Whereas basically on the other hand, you have people literally just rioting and they don't even know the name of the guy that they're rioting about. They don't care. They just want free stuff. And there's a lot of people who support it. Just say, fuck the system. Take it down, right? Just take whatever you can because it's just an unjust system. It's a racist system. I'm absolutely willing to admit that there's a bunch of police departments in this country, some of which more than others, that have, the good old boy network and, basically prejudiced, even racist cops. And, that is a problem, I'm sure, in some individual spaces. But to say that there's systemic racism and that in every single police department across the country it's all systemically racist, why? Like, you know, I would agree that as long as cannabis is illegal, it is a fundamental injustice baked into the cake, and so you will have these inevitable second and third order effects of people not complying with the unjust law. But to me, the more that cannabis does get legalized, and people, I mean, for God's sake, in this state and in many other states that have legalized, not only is cannabis legal, they are giving free money and incentives and totally expedited compliance timelines and permitting and licensing timelines and reimbursed fees and fines to basically what are the equity applicants, people who were, you know, they served time during the war on drugs. They got busted for cannabis back in the day, and it's fundamentally affected their life negatively. Now these people are getting reparations. They are getting restitution in the form of business licenses, essentially just given to them, and training on how to start a business, and basically the whole works. Bring them back up to speed and become constructive, engaged members of society. And so again, participating in my line of work has fundamentally changed my view of the system. I was an anarchist back in 2016. Trump was elected the same day that cannabis was legalized for adult use in California. So there's been a lot of changes out here for, you know, in a lot of different ways. And so, yes, there are plenty of other states where cannabis is not legal, and they're not doing these things. And I would agree, in those places, it probably still feels a lot like the old system. You know, but out here, I feel like I am living in a different world, a new world. So for me to basically rage against the machine of the old, you know, structure, I don't feel like it really exists anymore. Again, for better or worse, people die. We are mortal. And all the old, you know, racist, you know, really racist people, they die eventually. We all will die. And, you know, basically our children will be the ones who basically go forward and create the world. And so the question is, how do we just let racism die and stop waking it up and stop reinvigorating it? Because I'll tell you what, I was, you know, to be very real, I'm a lot more racist now than I was, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. I really was committed to building that big tent of liberty, and I was an anarchist, and I thought that everyone could kind of buy into that because it was ethically, logically, morally correct. But it doesn't work because we're not all the same, and we're not all influenced by the same things. And so, you know, again, as I've said, it's not that one race is better than another, but we are different. And, you know, we have different, you know, average IQs. We have different time preferences. We have different physical capability. And, you know, the commies just want to mash us all together into a big gray commie blob where we're all NPCs just receiving the state propaganda and our pittance dispensed by the bureaus. But I have a greater hope for the human species. I believe that we are capable of more. And I've seen so many, you know, I've seen so many black people who have done well, at least kind of on, you know, a national profile. There are obviously so many examples of people, you know, whatever their skin color, of rising up and embracing the ethics and morals that this country was built on and building tremendous lives, really just extraordinary lives. And there's, you know, countless examples of white people doing it as well, and, you know, Asians and stuff too. But it's very important to realize that white people are not evil because they want to focus on instituting ethics and morality in their communities, right? Once we've resolved the cannabis question, I'm not in favor of legalizing cocaine or heroin or methamphetamine. I think that there's a very natural discussion to be had about mushrooms and some of the other research chemicals that have no demonstrated toxicity, right? LSD was originally used, it was the basis of the 12-step program in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? They changed it at a certain point when LSD got added to the, you know, list of scheduled, you know, controlled substances. But ultimately, LSD and psychedelics were used to cure people, essentially, almost overnight, of addictive behaviors. You know, addiction to opiates, addiction to tobacco, you know, basically parts of their psychology that were very stunted and restrained all of a sudden just got unlocked, and they turned into these whole new people, like they filled into their shell, so to speak. And so there's so many avenues for healing and development on this planet, regardless of what your ancestral background is, and none of us are to the promised land just yet. And all of us are being restrained unjustly by basically the deep state and the secret space program and the secrets of free energy that have already been discovered on this planet but have been withheld for the sake of, you know, the gain of private parties that, you know, control the system, to be very, very frank about it. And we will overthrow that system. It is fundamentally unjust. We will not be ruled by usury, and we will not be extracted from as a cattle class, right? All of us are economic cattle to this system. And we can't have a system that is overflowing with energy and people can tap into it and everybody can be prosperous for pennies, right, when this technology is effectively implemented. And that is what I personally intend to spend my life doing, right, to all people across all continents. Again, far beyond the shores of America, I believe that the continent of Africa will only be developed with a system of airships and basically 3D printed, decentralized transportation distribution networks of all kinds of goods and services. When you can't build highways into the middle of a gigantic continent, fly in the ships and basically take everything buoyed in an aerostatic craft right where it needs to be. And we can develop the entire planet on an eco-friendly basis. Again, I'm actually an environmentalist. I'll tell you with perfect certainty and can explain to you exactly why global warming and climate change is a total fraud. But I'm about renewable energy more than almost anybody else that I've ever met. And, I'm committed to implementing a world full of clean technology because that's the way it just should be. And it's more efficient and it can be done. So I don't see a reason why it shouldn't. It will make people sovereign on a decentralized basis. So the thing is, though, again, none of this will be given to you. Even if you can tap into the life force in the root of the tree of life, right, you still have to do the work of putting the tap in the root and taking a drink, right? No one can open your mouth and pour it down your throat. It won't happen. You don't deserve to be a part of that world if you can't even take the most basic, rudimentary, prerequisite actions to engage in good faith with that society. So that's what, again, my message is to the dumb commie liberals and the progressives and, basically the people, black, white, Hispanic, who think that they are oppressed or that black people are oppressed. You are what you see yourself to be, right? Everything is, a hologram in a sense in an etheric universe. And if you want to paint yourself as a victim and you won't listen to anybody who tells you otherwise, well then guess what, bud? You are a victim and you will always be the underclass. You will always be subservient. You will always be our wait staff at very most because you can't even take the most basic moral and ethical actions to engage with us on good faith, right? And then, so I'm not going to sit down at any negotiating table, especially when the only demand is something as retarded as end white supremacy, something that doesn't even exist and never has. And the more that you want to make that phantasm your primary occupation and sole fascination, the more that you will create the boogeyman that you think you're fighting, and you already have. White nationalism, white supremacy, right? There was nobody in this country who actively applied those terms 10 years ago. I had never met any in my entire life. But now you've got millions of people thinking, hey, maybe these guys are right, because obviously these rioters and these dumb liberals who are supporting them, this is not going to go down a path that we can follow, and these people are completely insane. And, maybe the white race is superior at a certain point because this shit is so stupid that I can't think of any other explanation why so many people would buy into such a dumb mentality. And again, back in 2015, 2016, I was very different minded. I was definitely an anarchist. I would self-apply that term. And I would have supported defunding the police. And I don't think that's a smart idea anymore. And again, there's still at least religion in the Hispanic communities in a big way. So, even if they vote Democratic, a lot of times there's still morality in Hispanic communities. And a lot of those, are more conservative. There's plenty of super conservative Hispanics, and Asian people have a very strong social consciousness that binds them and basically controls their time preferences and makes it so they don't do a bunch of crazy, emotional outbursts and dumb things. And, white people, we've got basically our endless struggle to fight and die and bleed over tiny plots of land. So we've learned to kind of obey the rules. Even the dumb rednecks still know that the rules exist and they do mean something. And you have to try and follow them, even if you break them most of the time, right? But there just doesn't seem to be that consciousness in large parts of the black community. And it really does seem like they're on a war footing. They believe they are at war with this civilization. And they treat us as such. And so I can't, again, engage in good faith with people who are at war with me when I have done nothing wrong to them. And so I will protect myself, and I will be prepared to protect myself, because again, I've already been robbed and mugged and looted because I trusted people when I probably shouldn't have trusted them. I was trying to be the good liberal who was colorblind and wanted to just party with black people, and would just had in good faith they wouldn't take all my shit. But we all got to learn lessons one way or another, and it's ultimately hardly the greatest tragedy this universe has ever sustained. And and I've stolen stuff too in my life. It's like, yes, white people commit crime, but there's a difference between white people committing crime and eventually stopping because they feel guilty about it, or they got in trouble and they are shamed by the people around them. And there's a difference between that and people who are on a war footing and who see everything that they take as rightfully theirs and don't feel any remorse. And there is no shame. In fact, there's a positive feedback loop. People are coddling the criminals. This isn't Martin Luther King. This isn't Malcolm X. These are straight up just methed out criminals and cracked out just, violent looters who literally will admit on camera that they don't give a shit about George Floyd. This is about getting their monies, right? And so it's hard to know what really is the solution here when people want to be treated like an underclass and they are completely incapable of accepting responsibility. And again, there's plenty of white zombies roaming the streets, crackheads and toothless freaking wonders, just basically doing their thing as well. Nobody's saying that white people are not exempt from evil, right? It's just that we've had far more centuries of killing each other and learning that if we don't obey the rules, if we don't obey the rule of law, then we have the basically the former, the state of nature and tribalism, and we'll go back to just killing each other all day, every day, to take little plots of land. Because if you don't understand that law is the way to have peace, then you don't understand anything. And again, you're not worthy of the civilization that you're inhabiting. So it's important that we recognize that you cannot appease the mob. You cannot give in to these people. There is no negotiation to be had. And, we just have to protect ourselves, and we have to take all actions we can politically, economically, within our personal lives, distancing ourselves from these Democrat-run cities, putting yourself out of harm's way, taking your family, more importantly, out of harm's way. And if that means moving to a mostly white, redneck place, like, for example, where we live in California, our county, well, then that's the solution, because otherwise you're just gambling with fate. And if that's your thing, by all means, if you're a young single person who's ready to basically, get down on one side or another, then, by all means, you do you. But right now I've got 2 little ones, and I'm not going to play any fucking games with a bunch of dumb commies who think that basically they can just try and take down civilization because they're mad about something, right? When things are changing, we can make positive change. And I will help you. I will stand side by side, whatever your skin color is, if you're ready to take responsibility and move forward into this new world. Right, but if you're not willing to do that, and you think I'm the enemy and you deserve something from me, and that you're just a child and nobody can help you until basically we just start filling up your bank account with taxpayer funds, then we've got nothing to discuss, my friend, and I'll see you on the battlefield, I guess. But again, metaphorically speaking, I'm not I'm a very peaceful person, but somebody wants to come at me and pull a weapon on me, there's only one thing that's going to happen, and I will stop anything that serves, stand in my way like that, and I will do it without hesitation. So anyway, I wish we could talk about something else, I guess, but this is kind of the thing, and it hasn't gone anywhere. I realized a couple years ago that this racial thing was not going to go away. It is their final, basically, game to try and break this civilization. And the good news there is that if we win here, it's interesting also that they're pressing the pandemic and the medical fascism, because it's the race issue and the medical fascism. Those are the 2 strongest programs that the cabal still has running. And if we can beat those, then, again, I don't think they will have anything left. And if Trump gets reelected and we can actually expose the very seedy, satanic aspect of our society and the people in positions of power who have been aiding and abetting it for decades, well, then we will have a real chance to build a golden century and a golden millennium in this country and many others. But again, I'm not going to kowtow to the mob in any fashion. I'm going to continue on my path of truth and justice. And again, all who are, of good faith are welcome to join me. But if you got a demon on your shoulder and you think you're just going to get something for free, You're gonna get the fuck out of my car, bud. Peace. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. I hope you're having a good one. Peace.